You're Free to Go is sponsored by Milburn Men's Clothing, where top athletes shop for sharp, tailored style. And whether Mark and I are in the studio or the courtroom, Milburn dresses us for success. Mention YFTG and get 10% off at Milburn Men's Clothing, which has been providing the finest in men's clothing and suits since 1946. Call 651-645-2922 or visit www.milburn.com. Welcome back, everybody, to You're Free to Go, this exciting podcast from real attorneys talking about their real criminal cases, the behind-the-scenes look at what goes on in these exciting criminal trials and so forth. With Mark in the studio again, came in from California, so we're happy to be together in person. We got our engineer here. We've got our show creator, Callie, here. It's a good day for us. And
absolutely.
We're excited to bring a couple more cases to our audience.
Our crazy-ass cases.
Crazy-ass cases. We both have good ones to talk about today. I'm going to do a quick short before we get going, if I can.
Please.
This is also a new case. It's still open, so I'm not going to say too much, but I'm trying to figure out the defense strategy, because it's a gentleman who applied to buy a gun, and he fills out the application, and everyone knows they do criminal background checks when you go to get a gun, and if you're a convicted felon, you're not going to be approved to get the gun. So he checks off the box that he's not a convicted felon. A couple days later, they call him back. Hey, we did the background check. You're a convicted felon. He said, well, when I was in your store, I called my lawyer from New York from 20 years ago, who handled some traffic stuff for me, and said, hey, on those traffic cases, was I ever convicted? He said, no, I don't think so. It was a long time ago. I don't even have your files anymore. It was at least 20 years ago, but I don't think you were convicted. He says, yeah, I don't think I was convicted either. So he fills out the form. He gets called 4 days later from the gun shop. You cannot pick up your gun because it says you're a convicted felon. The next day, there's a cop at his house arresting him for filing a false application for a gun. So it's going to be interesting because you have to intentionally lie on this application. That's part of the element of the crime. He called his lawyer. His lawyer didn't know, so he probably forgot. But my argument is going to be to the prosecutor that if he knew he had a criminal conviction, what do people with felony convictions do? They buy guns off the street. They don't go buy it in a gun store because they know they're doing a background check. So
I think the key to your defense is that the lawyer will agree to the conversation.
Right.
And the problem I've always found, there's a principle in criminal law, especially in white-collar crimes, there's a defense of what we call good faith.
Right.
That you believed in good faith, that you were not intending to commit this crime, that you were not intending to steal the money or lie or whatever. And I've had cases where there's also a defense of good faith reliance on the advice of counsel. And if you can prove that, the judge gives the jury an instruction, and that instruction is that that's an absolute defense to that particular crime. The problem I've found is a lot of times lawyers at the end of the day, they don't want to come forward.
That's right.
Because sometimes they come forward admitting that they gave bad advice or improper advice. Correct. Or even illegal advice.
Yes.
So, good luck.
Well, the first step, as you know, is we have to get the client to authorize that lawyer to speak with me, because all his communications with that lawyer are attorney-client privilege. So I did get copied on an email today, because it is a brand new case, from my client to his old lawyer authorizing him to speak with me. So I'm going to be very interested to have this conversation and see if it's consistent with what my client said, that he actually called him while in the gun store and got the advice, from the counsel, and if the counsel will actually step up and put that in writing.
That'd be interesting.
I'll keep you posted. Okay. I'll keep all our listeners posted.
Let us know.
I will. I know the last time you had a really fascinating case about a pilot, and ironically, you have another pilot case to talk about today.
This one involves Columbia.
All right, love it. Let's hear it.
Columbia University, I mean the country. Well, it turns out that back in the 80s, and it may still exist today, I haven't checked, the Colombian government, specifically the Colombian Air Force, had a small base at the outskirts of the Fort Lauderdale Airport. And what they would do is the Colombian government was buying military supplies from the U.S. military as part of some kind of contractual arrangement. And they were flying up empty C-130s from Colombia, stocking them with the stuff that they had gotten from our government, and then flying them back down. Well, one of the pilots of those planes, a captain, we'll call him my client, to protect his name, he was seen coming off the plane, the cockpit, out of the cockpit, with two football-shaped packages wrapped heavily in masking tape.
Which
And-
is, when we've read thousands of police reports, and they always use certain terminology. Football shape
Right.
is something we see when there's an exchange of money, like a drug deal. Green paper looking like, they always use these terms. It's always the same. But is it really looking like a football? I don't know.
Well,
yeah,
that's what the claim was.
yeah,
Somebody else associated with the Air Force there noticed it and reported it to his commander. So he was called into the commander's office. He was demanded to turn over these packages. And then the commander, wisely, without opening them, called the American government, called the DEA, suspecting it would be drugs, probably cocaine, Colombia,
yeah.
80s.
80s. Yeah.
So what happened is DEA came and they opened the packages, and sure enough, there was cocaine in them. Well, they immediately arrested the client. Well, somebody he knew or some contact he had contacted me, and I went down to the jail. And I interviewed him, and what I'm about to tell you is no longer privileged because it's something we told the government. It's part of a motion I filed in court. He claimed that he didn't think it was drugs in those packages. He thought it was cash, U.S. currency.
Right.
Well, why are you bringing up U.S. currency on a plane hidden like that? Well, it turns out if you bring up more than $10,000 in currency, you have to declare it.
Sure.
And if
yeah.
you fail to declare it, that's a crime. But it's interesting, it's a crime at the time that I think carried only a 2 or 3 or 4 year sentence, as opposed to the cocaine, which was a 15-year sentence. So the first thing I'm thinking is, did this guy read the law books while he was waiting for me in jail to
Right.
come up with a great defense?
Sure. He was in a chat room, which they didn't have in
Right.
the 80s, and they said, hey, if you ever get busted, this is your defense.
But I said, okay, so why are you bringing up cash? Well, it turns out, he said, no, we all have a little side business going. We call it the La Sociedad de C-130. And what it was they were bringing up cash to then go buy everything they could get their hands on at Sawgrass Mills or somewhere else, anything from jeans, clothing, sneakers, washing machines, anything.
Right.
Bring them back down on the planes and sell them in Colombia for double or triple the price.
And some people may think that's hard to believe. It's not reasonable. The truth is, living in South Florida, I hear about these things all the time. It's an area where we have a lot of nannies, and the nannies come from foreign countries, small island countries a lot of times, and they live in-house with these families as a nanny, and they take their entire paychecks. They have no expenses because they live in the house and they get fed. They take their entire paycheck, go to Target, go to Toys R Us, and they buy stuff and ship it home. That's what they do. So it's really not an unreasonable...
Absolutely. And at the
Yeah.
time, for example, jeans,
Right.
were a hot item in other places. And so they were making, it sounded very plausible. I said, okay, that's
Wait, so
great.
they were doing this to make money or doing it as a favor to
Doing to make money.
Okay.
All of the people involved, there were people in the Air Force down there and people here, and that's what they were doing
Right.
to make money. Okay, sounded very plausible.
Sure.
Would be a very good defense. We would basically be admitting to a crime, but a crime that he couldn't do much time
Right,
for.
much less serious.
Meanwhile, he's already in jail because he's being detained because he has no roots to the community. By the time we would get to trial, be 6 to 9 months anyway. If a 2-year sentence maximum, he'd be out before you know it.
So did they deny him bond because they thought he was a flight risk?
He was if I had no ties to the
No
community
ties.
here.
Yeah, but
He's
you
a
think if they
foreign
take his
national.
passport,
Now, what's he going to do? Where's he
Right.
going to live?
He would have nowhere to
Where's he
live.
going to be?
Right.
Was he going to stay in the barracks? I don't even think there were barracks.
Right.
So, in any event, what happens is now I've got this possible defense. But if he just gets up on the witness stand and says that, no one's going to believe
That's
him.
right. A jury might
right?
not. Yeah.
So now I got to have proof. He tells me that there are a number of people down in Bogota with the military that they will back up his story. Well, how am I going to get them to cooperate? There is a procedure by which they're not going to get them to fly up here. There's a procedure by which I can, under the federal rules, take extraterritorial depositions and use them at trial as though they were live evidence. And so I filed a motion with the court. The court agreed. We had the trip approved by then Secretary of State Alexander Haig. We got the Colombian government to agree to allow these people to accept formal service of the depositions. And then we arranged a trip with the assistant U.S. attorney and I to fly down to Bogota.
But you know what? So often clients will tell us, "Oh, I have this person who will, attest to this, and this person will support me and tell me it's." And when we reach out to them, so often they're closed-lipped.
You're right.
Either they lawyered up and the lawyer told them, "Don't speak about this, don't say a word. You're only gonna get yourself in trouble." Or I've had so many clients who say, and I'm sure you have too, "Oh, I'm really tight with this politician. I've known him for 30 years. I've donated all his campaigns." The moment you call that politician, they don't even know who your client is. So
Tiny little vignette about that.
That's what this show's about.
One
Bring it
time,
on. Bring
I
it on.
represented, my partner and I represented a cabinet official in Florida in a corruption case. And we were told that another cabinet official would back up his story about certain things and would be a good character witness. So we knew the cabinet official was not going to voluntarily show up in court, so we needed to subpoena him. So I sent a process server up to Tallahassee. And that cabinet official, it was like a chase scene out of a movie. That cabinet official ran all through the Capitol and tried to hide, and eventually ran into the men's room, went into a stall in the men's room. And my process server stood on the toilet above, leaned over, and handed him the subpoena.
You see these in movies, but it happens in real
It
life.
happens in real life.
All those writers in the movies, they steal that from us.
No, that's right.
The real stories.
The truth is stranger than fiction.
Right, yeah.
So anyway, now we got this trip arranged to Colombia. Now, mind you, this is in the middle of the 80s, like 86 or whatever.
Right.
Colombia is absolutely one of the most dangerous places to go. And we had to be assured that we had proper protection. So we were told we could take these depositions at the U.S. Embassy. We booked a hotel, and we arranged for transportation. We were not going to supposedly go out on the street. We were going to just take the transportation, armored cars, to the embassy, and then take the depositions. We'd scheduled 3 days there. Well, this assistant U.S. attorney, normally they're pretty straight-laced.
Yes. They are.
Very,
They're buttoned up very tight.
Very tight.
Yeah.
This assistant U.S. attorney was the exact opposite. I won't mention his name.
Very unusual.
We get there the first night, and he says, "Listen, there's a casino in town. I think we should go." And I said, "I don't know. I'm a little freaked out about being out on the streets here." He wound up talking me into going. I wanted to forge more of a relationship with this guy anyway, for obvious reasons. So we get in a cab. He spoke perfect Spanish. At the time, my Spanish was halting. And next thing I know, we pull up to this brownstone. There's a guy in like an English beefeater, costume outside, like in front of the palace.
Yes, sir.
In London.
Yep.
And Buckingham Palace. And we go in and we're walking upstairs. And as we're getting closer, we're like on the 3rd level, going to the 4th level. And I'm not hearing any music or noise or anything. And we finally get to the top of the stairs, and there's a big open doorway. and all I see are women in negligees sitting on a couch.
No way.
I
No.
said, "We're in a whorehouse." Do you realize that?
You've got to write a screenplay, Mark. This is a movie.
So
This is a movie.
I said, "We're not staying here." He was surprised too. Apparently, the cabbie figured probably had some deal with the place.
Right.
So we get back, we take a different cab, we wind up in the casino. We're sitting at the table playing blackjack, and he's betting, and he's drinking. The assistant U.S. attorney is drinking, and he's drinking more, and he keeps ordering drinks. You know, in Vegas and a lot of places when you're playing, you order drinks, they're free,
They're
right?
free, sure.
Finally, we decide to say, let's leave. Decide to leave.
You have a hearing, a meeting the next day or something?
Next day, we're supposed to be at the embassy early in the morning
okay.
for the first deposition.
So you're out having a good time and he's drinking a lot. Okay.
As we're leaving, all of a sudden, this little waiter comes running, La Cuenta, La Cuenta. And turns out there was a bill for all of his drinks. I didn't drink that night. I like to drink, but I didn't drink that night. And
I can't imagine his expense account is very generous working for the government.
No. So, in any event, he turns around and starts arguing with this waiter. And I have this vision of us getting arrested in Bogota.
Right.
And him especially.
He forgets he's not in the U.S.
Right.
This is
I pull him away. I say,
wrong.
come on, pay the bill. Paid the bill. We go back next morning. We go take our first deposition. All right. The first witness was not that clear on anything. Like you said,
right.
didn't really want to be involved.
Sure. No surprise.
You know, yeah, we bought some stuff, but no, we didn't have a real arrangement. And no, I think I did it once, and it wasn't really backing up my client's story. The second witness.
If that witness, do you have a chance to talk to him off the record privately and get an idea of what he's going to say? Or
No, I didn't have that opportunity because these are still existing members of the Colombian military.
Right.
And they came with other people, lawyers,
Right,
whatever
the
they
whole
were.
team. They have a whole team
whole
with
team.
them, of course.
The second witness, pretty much the same, and I'm thinking to myself, this isn't going as planned.
Wow.
And then we go back that night, and because we only had two the first day, I convinced the AUSA this time, let's stay in the hotel and eat dinner in the hotel.
Yeah.
I go to sleep early. We go the next morning. The next morning we go, and then now we have someone who is elevated from being just a military officer, now he's a military judge.
That's a big deal.
Big deal.
Yeah.
I figure this is going to be, if he can back up our story, real credibility, right?
Yes.
He proceeds to basically confess that they had a plan to import cocaine on these jets into the United States.
First of all, that's unbelievable. Second of all, the way we're trained, I would be sitting here in my mind saying, plead the Fifth. I should assert the Fifth Amendment, even though he's in a different country.
I have, to this day,
oh my God,
no idea why he spilled the beans. Maybe he figured it was a protected, to this day,
maybe he
now,
thought it was untouchable.
40 years later or whatever,
Yeah.
I cannot answer the question.
Well, you know, we're here, you're there to protect your client, so you're loving this testimony. Maybe, well, actually,
I
not.
took the shortest
Yeah.
deposition.
Yeah, because he's now.
Now, of course, the U.S. Attorney's asking questions.
Right.
He leaves, and both of us are sitting there with our mouths
Wow.
open, just dumbfounded. And I said to the U.S. Attorney, well, I have no defense now, but I think you're in bigger trouble because you've just stumbled across this international incident.
Yes. Yep.
And he leaves, goes to make some phone calls. When he comes back, before he can even say a word to me, the consular official comes in and says, what did you guys do? I said, what are you talking about? He said, we have a formal complaint from the Colombian government
Oh no.
that you coerced a witness into lying.
So he thought about it, what he had said, regretted it.
And you are being asked to leave the country immediately.
Amazing.
Now, this is Friday. Friday afternoon now. We're sitting
And
around.
You didn't videotape that deposition, I imagine. No, not back in the '80s. They didn't do that.
No.
But today you'd be able
We
to.
would have if
Yeah.
we couldn't arrange it.
Right.
We had a court reporter there.
Sure.
Yeah. And anyway, we taped it.
Right. But they could always argue that the coercion happened offline, but come on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I am totally freaked out. I'm totally freaked out because, number one, my defense has gone out the window.
Right.
Number two, I'm being asked to leave this country
Sure.
immediately.
Yes, it's already not a safe
right.
country to be in.
Right. And I don't know what to do. And in the meantime, I say to the U.S. attorney, what are we going to do? He says, I don't know. I just spoke to my superiors. We'll figure it out.
Wow.
We get in the vehicle to go back. We go to the hotel. And as we're about to walk out of the vehicle to go into the hotel, he notices that there's this antiquities store right next door to the hotel and says, well, let's buy some things. So at least we made this trip productive. Okay?
Gonna buy some gifts for the family
Right.
or what?
So we go into the store. And I buy like these tapestries for my wife, and he's walking around. Next thing I know, I'm somewhere else in the store, and I look over. He's at the counter, talking to this beautiful woman at the counter. And I say, I'm going back to the room. He says, no, I'll hang here for a little bit. Go back to the room. I call the airlines to try to find out if I can get a flight out that
Right.
night. No flights.
No.
Book a flight for the following morning.
For just yourself.
Now I'm going to stay in the room the entire
Right,
night.
you're not going
I'm going to
to-
bolt the door. I'm going to put furniture against
Right.
the door.
Sure. And you only booked a seat for you, right?
Just for me. The hell with him.
Right. He's on his own now.
He's on his own. And he calls me. He says, we're going out to dinner with Louisa, whatever her name was.
The woman from the store, the
woman from
antiquities
He
store?
says, I'm in love.
Oh,
I
my
said,
God.
wait a second.
No, he didn't.
Going out to dinner. He says, no, the restaurant's really nearby. It's very safe. It'll be a nice dinner. So I agree. I just didn't want to sit in the room.
Right.
We go out to dinner. He's fawning over her. I said, we're leaving in the morning. This is the flight. He says, no. Stay for the weekend.
Wow.
He stayed the whole weekend.
Unbelievable.
I flew back. Okay.
Yeah. I've traveled with, with a lot of prosecutors over the years for depositions, evidence reviews, and so forth. Never, ever have I experienced something like this.
Oh, wait.
They're always on their best behavior.
So now we're going to go to trial. And we work out a deal. The deal is he obviously found out from his superiors that the last thing they want to come out is even though it absolutely destroys my defense, it's not just my client who was doing it.
Right.
The members of the Colombian military
Sure.
were doing it. I'm not saying it was sanctioned by the government, but it was being done by other members.
Right.
It was an organized ring.
Mhm.
They don't want that to come out. They don't want that to be known.
Which is
So
really
they
helpful for
suppress
you.
it. They'll agree to do that if I'll agree not to try to introduce the depositions of the other two witnesses, which were
They weren't that good for you.
they were okay,
Okay, yeah.
but they weren't really great.
Okay.
So I agree to that, which I thought was a great deal
Right. Sounds like it.
because otherwise that stuff came in, we had no defense.
So now is it really just going to be your client that's going
just
to
my
have
client
to testify?
My client testifies.
Which is always a big decision for us. Do we put our client on the stand or not?
Has to.
In this case, you had no choice.
There's a famous lawyer, very well-known lawyer, one of the great criminal lawyers of all time, named Edward Bennett Williams. He's long since passed away.
Was he Texas? I'm trying to
No,
remember.
he was, I think, from D.C. He owned
DC.
the Washington Redskins at one time.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah, I knew
And
the name.
Williams and Conley's, the firm still
Yep,
exists.
Still exists, yeah.
Okay? Very famous firm in D.C., very prestigious firm. He once said, I read a quote, when asked back in the day why he charged $50,000 to represent the client at trial, He said it was $10,000 to represent him in the trial, $40,000 to make the decision whether or not to put him on the stand.
Right. You're right.
Because it is the ultimately difficult
It
decision.
is a huge, huge
And
decision.
and what happens is if your client does not take the stand, now federal judges, and they've done this for a long time, they want to protect the record. They will have the client advised in open court on the record, not the jury there, that you have the right to take the stand. Has anybody coerced you? Anybody influenced you? Are you doing this of your own free will, that you do not want to testify? You have the absolute right to testify. And they do that to protect the record.
And like you said, the jury's outside the room at that point. They're in the jury deliberating room while you do this in the courtroom with the client and the judge and the prosecutor. And it's a very serious hearing that the judge wants to make sure the client is fully informed and aware and making a conscientious decision, a well thought out decision. But what's interesting from the rules or of the bar and criminal justice system is that we as the lawyer get to make all strategy decisions, not the client. But when it comes down to this one decision, it's 100% on our client, whether they want. But if we want to call or not call a witness, even though our client may want us to call a witness, that strategy decision we make, not the client, except for when they testify.
Now, interesting because
it's their decision.
2 years ago, I had a very, very difficult case, and I had a client. We did a mock trial.
Yep.
And in the mock trial, the client testified. We had 2 sample juries. Both juries found him not guilty in the mock trial. When the time came for trial, I thought for sure he was going to testify, and I had him prepared to testify. At the last minute, he decided not to testify.
Yeah.
He just freaked out. I don't know what the reason was. He was convicted.
Wow.
Now, I'm not saying it would have been any different
Right.
had he pled, because a mock trial is never the same as a real trial.
And that's one of the reasons the judges go through such a lengthy and detailed colloquy with our client, because if they get an adverse verdict, they want to make sure that client was locked into their decision, whether it's to testify or not. If they made the decision to testify and they get the guilty verdict, well, we went through this very intense colloquy and you made it clear you wanted to testify.
Yeah.
So they can't use it on appeal.
So in any event, we go to trial, and now I figure, all right, my last hope is my client. And if only he tells the story he told me, and by the way, that's the other ethical conundrum that you have sometimes. If your client tells you one story, and then they're going to get on the stand, and they're going to tell you, well, I'm going to tell it differently, you got a problem.
Yes.
You can't allow them to lie, and we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
So, but he was absolutely prepared. He gets on the witness stand during direct examination. He does a great job. Problem is, the prosecutor was very smart. For all his craziness,
Yeah.
he was very smart. Because I had told my client what the military judge had said about that confession. The prosecutor, our agreement was he wouldn't introduce it at trial, but he simply asked my client, do you know so-and-so? Do you know so-and-so? Do you know so-and-so? My client got very nervous on the stand and started fumfering.
And the jury saw that.
And the jury saw that, and I'm sitting there dying, going, please, can this end now, please? Because he lost all credibility in the way he was answering the prosecutor's questions, because he knew that the prosecutor knew what the truth was, and he was afraid that somehow it would come out.
And we've talked a lot about juries, and maybe that's one of the things we haven't touched on is optics. Juries look at everything in the court. They look at us. They look at the defendant, the witnesses at all times, and they look for those things. And if they saw him maybe start sweating a little bit or stuttering all of a sudden.
Sometimes I just bang my elbow and say, sit up.
Right. They watch very, very closely to every detail.
Absolutely.
And that can turn them on a dime
He lost credibility. And the interesting thing about the decision on whether to testify or not is, as criminal lawyers, what we're doing is we're more often than not trying to win our case by beating up the government witnesses and cross-examining it, finding holes, crevices that we could jump into, and destroying their credibility. And that's how we try our cases. And if we're good at it, we often can create reasonable doubt without putting on any evidence. The problem is the minute you put your client on the stand and they lose credibility, it's game over.
That's right.
And that's what happened then. So the end of the crazy story, except there's one postscript.
Okay.
Years later, I got a call from the prosecutor. He then went into private practice. He needed me to represent him. He was under indictment for money laundering.
Really? Did it have anything to do with the woman he met at the store?
No,
No.
no, no. By the way, he wanted me to stay in Bogota that particular weekend, and I decided not to. When I got back, I wound up in the hospital with some form of intestinal bug.
Right. You drank the water.
I don't know what it was.
Right.
And I've been back to Colombia many times before, and
Right.
I don't want to suggest any. I think it's a wonderful
beautiful country.
Been to all over, and right now it's one of our greatest allies in South America.
Right.
But back then it was scary.
Did you actually represent him? Did you wind up representing
No,
him?
I didn't represent him. It was.
Yeah. But that's the greatest form of flattery, isn't it? When you're someone that you've been in opposition
Yeah.
and litigated against calls to hire
But
you.
it's the greatest form of sadness
True.
that's how his life turned.
Right.
I don't know what happened.
Yeah, that's
But
tough.
it was a wild ride.
Sure was. Another great one.
And more importantly, something that never ever came to light publicly.
Sure.
That was suppressed.
It's suppressed. Yeah.
Yep, by the government.
Yeah, interesting. You're Free to Go is sponsored by Lang Realty, South Florida's premier residential real estate broker. Whether you're buying, selling, or renting a home or condo, Lang's experienced realtors are standing by ready to help you. Contact one of Lang's top realtors today at 561-703-2427. Well, I have I don't know if I call it a crazy ass case today. It's just a case that's sat with me. It's been about 15 years since I handled this case, and it's just always one that I think about. It's a interesting case, I'll call it, and it's not that long, not as detailed as the one you just shared with us. It wasn't in the news, so I'm going to give this client the name Kevin, which happens to be one of my childhood friends. So if he's out there listening, which I'm sure he is, it's just fake. It's not really Kevin, but we're going to call him Kevin today. Good friend of mine. It occurred in Houston, and there was a boy, again, named Kevin, 15 years old. He was literally the trophy kid. He was Eagle Scout. He was a 4.0 student. He was president of his class. He was everything. He had a girlfriend. He had tons of friends. He was a good athlete. Wasn't quarterback of the football team, but he was checked off every single box. His future couldn't have been brighter, right? And he came from a beautiful family, no siblings, but he had an amazing father he was super close with, and who was very involved with him when he was a Cub Scout, then Boy Scout, then Eagle Scout. And he had a great mom. The family of three were very, very, very close. One day when he's 15 years old, he comes home from school, and all of the father's belongings are gone. Everything's gone. All his clothes, all his personal effects, and the father's gone. The mother's on the couch bawling her eyes out, crying. She says, I have no idea where your dad is. He took everything. He's gone. I was out at work, came home. Everything's gone. There's no note. There's no nothing. They try calling every phone number they have for him, every relative, every friend. No one knows anything about him. Completely vanished from this earth. The father was a working man. He had no criminal history, no mental issues, nothing. Everything was normal. And maybe that's part of why this really hit home for me. It was just everything seemed so perfect. Well, within, as you can imagine, this young boy, his life just really imploded, right? He idolized his father. They did so much together. 3 months later, this all-star young boy was involved in a drive-by shooting where someone died. And the allegation was that he was in the back of a car with the gun, who actually shot the gun and killed somebody in a drive-by shooting. Just like that, his entire life has changed. Didn't have much of a defense. He didn't hire me. He didn't hire me to defend the case. I didn't know him yet. Again, he's 15 years old. He gets convicted, and he gets 45 years in prison.
Oh my God.
45 years, 15 years old. Basically, his life's over, right?
Sure.
And we've met, clients who spend a couple years in jail or prison. It's really, really hard for them to reassimilate and transition back into life. Certainly, if you spend your entire maturing years and adult years in there, 45 years later, you're not, life is not going to be good for you.
Besides, look who you're in with.
Right. Yeah. So here's the good thing, though, and part of the reason I describe this young man at 15 years old is so that you won't be surprised when I tell you that while in jail, he got friendly with the guards, and they would bring him cell phones. They'd bring him a cell phone. He would sit at night under his covers, and he taught himself English. He taught himself 2 other foreign languages. He even taught himself the law. He studied the law very, very intensely. That's why I mentioned he was a 4.0 student. Very bright kid. And every once in a while, as we know, the guards come through and they turn the jail cells upside down. They find all the paraphernalia. They confiscate it. So he'd lose his phone. The guard who he's friends with or a different guard would bring him a new one. So for these years, he was in for 12 years. He was getting his phone at night under the covers and educating himself. He'd read about politics. He's really kept himself as active as possible, tried to stay away from the bad guys in the jail and so forth. And he reads a case out of the U.S. Supreme Court, and it says that they've been studying the development of the brain, in particular the male brain, and that the male brain doesn't really develop until about anywhere from 24 to 27 years old. And because of that, the U.S. Supreme Court, and I'm sure you've seen this ruling, has decided that if you're below that age as a male, that you shouldn't get these draconian sentences. You shouldn't get these sentences that are basically life in prison because your brain hasn't developed to the point where you understand cause and effect, consequences, seriousness of your actions, and so forth. And certainly at 15 years old, he didn't understand that, right? So he was so smart and he had educated himself. He writes his own motion after 12 years in prison. He reads this case from the U.S. Supreme Court, and he submits the motion on his own. Pro se is the legal term, as you know, for that. And the craziest thing, this is where the twist and turn in this case that is so unbelievable. He submits it, and about 9 months later, he gets an order in the mail that the judge approved his motion to give him a new sentencing, to grant him a new sentencing hearing. About an hour later, he gets another letter certified that he signs for. It turns out his father, who he hadn't seen in 12 plus years, died and left him $100,000.
Huh.
Is that unbelievable? And this boy was so smart. He said, you know what, I could file this motion, but I have no idea how to argue this motion. And I need to get a new sentence. He took that money that just came from the sky, from the heaven, from his father dying, who he had never heard from, never knew where he was. And he reached out to me and he hired me. And I represented him on that. And it was really such an unbelievable blessing.
Did you get him resentenced?
So they transport him back. He was in Houston, and they had sentenced. He was living in a prison about 5 hours outside. In Texas, about 5 hours away from Houston. They bring him into Houston, and we're there for about 4 months, and finally have his sentencing hearing. And at the sentencing hearing, the prosecutor, now he's been in like 13 of his 45 years. And I convinced the prosecutor, hey, let's give him time served. He was a young kid. I think he was 27 at this point, 28 years old. And I showed, as you know, the prisons keep records. If you have DRs, discipline referrals, they keep track of that and so forth. And this young man had done everything in the jail perfectly. He had never stepped out of line, but for the phones that he was given, which they didn't really give him a DR for. He took every class. He got all these certificates and so forth. So we got him time served, which for viewers who may not understand that, it means that your sentence is fulfilled and you can walk out of the prison at that moment.
So he was free to go.
He was free to go.
That's a fabulous story.
And again, like you just mentioned, the something at the end that happens. This young man became a PhD in criminal justice. And he's now a professor in college of teaching criminal justice. The experience obviously had such a profound impact on him that he wanted to, share his knowledge.
That's amazing. And boy,
happy
having
ending.
lived it, he can teach it.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
right. It had a happy ending.
Wow, that's
You
that's
know,
great. You
I have
know,
another case we'll talk about another time where the young man also criminal prosecuted, blah blah, blah, is also a criminal justice professor. I think John Henry in New York. There's a good criminal justice school
yeah,
up
you
there.
know, it's interesting that you mention that because it like we say, we love to hear the judge say to our clients, "You're free to go,"
That's right.
but more often than not, we lose touch, lose contact with our clients.
Yeah.
But it's always wonderful when you learn that somebody turned their life around, whether they did time or they were even found not guilty, and then they wind up becoming very successful and living a happy, you know, normal life.
Right.
If there is such a thing as normality this day, but it's really it's great. And when you hear stories about clients of yours that have done well, I remember a couple of years ago, I got a call from a client who was a major league drug dealer in Miami,
Really.
and we went to trial, and luckily he was found not guilty of the serious counts, but was found guilty on some of the lesser counts. So we did some time, nothing near what he was facing. And then, I lost touch with him. We had a successful trial. We got along great. Out of the blue, like 15 years, 20 years later, like 2 years ago, he calls me to tell me what's going on in his life.
Love that.
He's married. He's got grandchildren now.
Wow. Yeah.
He's got a successful business. His life just is wonderful.
Those are the great stories that when people
That
ask.
was worth everything.
I agree.
Yeah.
And we do see that very often with our
Yeah.
clients.
Yeah,
Good people that made a mistake,
Yeah.
and then they learn from it and turn their life around.
that's right.
Yeah, so it's
So
really
what are we
good.
going to do for our
Well,
next
the
episode?
next one, maybe more crazy ass cases. I know, we don't know the timing. Someone can watch a podcast at any time. We don't know.
Yeah.
It may air this day, but we happen to be airing in the middle of the P. Diddy trial. I got to go up there next week. As you know, I'm representing his lead assistant. He had like 10 assistants. I have his lead. So I'll be in New York next week. The trial's currently going on with that client. But when we get back, I think I want to talk about a really interesting jewelry heist. I represented someone. There was a group of individuals going around the country to the most expensive jewelry stores in the country and hitting them, stealing, robbing them. And they got away with it for a long time until finally the feds caught up to them. And when they did, I was hired to represent one of those individuals. It's a pretty cool case. And there was attention all over the country from law enforcement because they'd been trying to stop them for years. And they finally got them. And I'll share that case with you next time.
Wow, and I've got another crazy trial that occurred here in Florida years ago, and involved a fellow who allegedly tried to kill his roommate, and they brought him out in the middle of the Everglades
Oh, boy.
with another guy, and while my client was supposedly standing holding him from behind, the other guy shot him several times, and they charged conspiracy to commit murder. But what made the case interesting is the reason the guy got shot 5 times in the neck and upper chest area. It's raining out. He somehow crawls in the mud and
Well, don't give too much of this case away. We want.
and writes in the mud,
No, he doesn't.
Enrique me mate or mata, whatever it was. Enrique killed me.
Wow.
Thought that he was going to die,
Oh, boy.
but everything clots and he's found. And then it was a crazy ass trial involving
Well,
insurance
no,
money.
no. Keep our listeners on the edge of their seat, Mark. Don't
And
tell
it
them
was
too
a
much.
twist at the end
Oh,
that resulted
no. I think
a great
I'm
result.
definitely going to tune in next
Yeah.
week for that one.
Yeah.
I think I'll sit on the couch and just
Yeah.
listen to you for
Yeah,
this one.
that's a crazy case.
Oh, good, good, good. Well, I guess until then,
Until then,
you
you're
are free to go. Down Low Investigations is a sponsor of You're Free to Go. Behind every great criminal defense attorney is a great private investigator. That's why Mark and I use Down Low to investigate cases all over the country. Down Low can help you too, whether you're running a background check on an employee or running a background check on a blind date, or let's say you need someone followed or some other type of investigative work conducted. Down Low is the way to go. Call Download Investigations at 561 843 1806. Everything expressed and discussed in this episode are the opinions and experiences of attorneys Guy Fromston and Mark Nurek and their guests. All ethical rules are complied with. Attorney-client privilege and confidential information is not shared or released during these episodes, and names, dates, locations, and other identifying information may be changed to protect confidentiality. Topics are embellished, and none of the statements made constitute legal advice and should not be considered or relied on as such.